usual, as several colleagues, and indeed even Professor Tan Chai Yong on our guest panel today, never left NUS after enrolling as undergraduates. It's my privilege to have enjoyed a front row seat in witnessing the growth of the program. So launching the Strange Start of Psychology at NUS today truly befits commemorating our 35th anniversary and pays tribute to one of the pioneer educators of the department, Professor John Elliott. Now, some of you may remember this. To major in psychology, you needed to take an aptitude test. All right, so which of these 8 patterns fit into this square here? Anyone wants to hazard a guess? Oh, everyone's muted, so so they can't. All right, so the answer is 5. All right, I won't have time to explain why it's 5. Right, this is the Raven's progressive matrices, supposed to be a culture fair test of non-verbal reasoning, and you had to do about 30 such patterns in 30 minutes, and it got progressively harder. I should clarify that the first and second cohorts did a different test, right? I may not have gotten in to do the Ravens. Now there's no longer a test, and even the prior prerequisite of a B- in 2 of the first year modules have been dropped. So anyone can major in psychology if they wish to. Now I took 2 of John's classes, cognitive and developmental psychology. In those days, the modules actually span across the 2 terms, right? There were no exams in term 1, so it went to week 16. And then there was a shorter term 2, and we only had a final exam for the entire year at the end of term 2. I enjoyed our tutorials, which had at most 7 students and were held in the lecturer's office. The small size ensured everyone could contribute, but was also terrifying as we could not hide, and everyone would know if you had not read the readings. Notice the stark gender imbalance, which generally remains the same in FASS today. I also had more hair at the time. I can't remember why I was holding the ape with skull statue. Could be related to the topics on AI or thinking. And John actually wanted to donate the statue to the department when he retired, but alas, he dropped it while packing and it broke. So there goes a part of department history. My fondest memories are of my honors class. There were only 10 of us, even smaller than the first cohort. You can see that the gender imbalance is not as stark. Now the gentleman here, as well as here, is 𝗨𝘂𝘃, now a senior lecturer with us. Unlike me, he looks the same. He's kind of kept his hair. We had our own honors room. This is the corridor outside the room in level 2 of AS6. Here's the seminar section of the room. It was large enough that we could actually partition it. You can't see it here, but in this corner, we put some bookshelves and we demarcated a sort of a lounge space. We could arrange all these desks into sort of either a U or a square shape, and then all the classes, the large classes, and large classes for this class was anything with 5 or more students, were held in this honors room. Smaller classes where there were only 3 or fewer students were held in the lecturer's office. This is John celebrating, he's actually in the lounge area, celebrating our graduation with us. Now you'll notice that in the pictures that the colors of our graduation hoods were different. Right, in those days we graduated twice. First with BA, hence the pink hood, after the 3rd year, and then with the social science honors and the gold hood after the honors year. Those good old days seem like a fairy tale and we'll never reprise them again. We currently have 312 students in the 4th year, so the experience today is naturally more impersonal. Now, John's book focuses on the years between 1986 and 2005. Perhaps a future colleague will write another book about the historical importance of events post-independence. Some of these events are touched on in the last chapter, but I'll just highlight a couple. Credit goes to Professor George Bishop, the first head of the Independent Psych Department, for making Tai Yong and senior management recognize that psychology is a lab-based discipline. We got an entire floor at AS5 for dedicated lab space in 2007. To this day, we sometimes still need to remind senior management of this must-have. Our expanded labs now include the 4th floor of the AS4 Annex building, and we may get more facilities in future in order to compete with the best psych departments in the world, where dedicated lab space is taken for granted. The other is clinical psychology. The master's program, which began in 2008, remains in high demand. The acceptance rate is only about 10%, 150 applicants for 15 places per year. This will grow as the pandemic has shown that the country and indeed the world, the importance of mental health. Now, in closing, I'd like to put on the record our thanks to our social work colleagues. Indeed, we have grown up, so to speak, under your wing and guidance. While we have, well, left the nest, to continue the metaphor, our two departments have a shared and meaningful history. It is my hope that these links will not be forgotten when the younger generation takes over. And of course, to John for writing this book and to 𝗕ន់for completing it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Winston. We'll now have Prof. Sim 𝗕ន់share a slide and walk us through his experience of shepherding this book to the finishing line.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time to join us for this book launch. Allow me to share my screen. The Strange Start of Psychology at the National University of Singapore. That's a title that John decided on after consultation with NUS Press, which helped us tremendously to bring this book into what it is now. So this is the book. You will get a chance to make an order soon, but I've been asked to share kind of an insider view of how this book kind of finally came into being, and some of the kind of unpublished aspects of this book that in some sense pays tribute to the author and probably will not be recorded for after this, right? So first things first, you will see on the book cover what looks like a maze. Those of us who are in psychology will be familiar with the 𝗏𝘁𝗿 maze, which is part of the psychology of learning. And in some sense, this maze, this 𝗏𝘁𝗿 maze is an apt analogy of the strange start that psychology had at NUS. I'll leave you to read the book to actually figure out what the strange start actually is. But I've been asked a couple of times what led us to write this book. So I'm going to just draw the extract from the prologue of the book. And essentially this book was to achieve two objectives. One was to actually have an official record of how psychology in NUS came into being. First as a program within the Department of Social Work, which was then renamed the Department of Social Work and Psychology. And the second was really to give voice to John Elliott, who actually walked the entire journey that is covered by this book. So in one or two words, this book is an institutional memory for the department. So let me share some insider information, so to speak, about this book. First of all, let me say that this person who is listed together with John actually doesn't deserve to be there, but because the publishers needed someone to liaise with, and also there was a need to bring the book to completion. So there is the additional name that is added to the authorship. So it's really an add-on. Let me categorically declare that 𝗕𝘂𝗎's contribution to this book is not statistically significant. And of course, in the course of bringing this book to pass, I had a lot of help both from Winston as well as Melvin to organize, to kind of polish, and finally to bring this book to where we are today. And I do want to also acknowledge the help of NUS Press, which gave us valuable advice on how to organize the book, in fact, how to title the book so that it can reach a larger audience. The book is meant partly to be a tribute to John Elliott, and in addition to giving him voice in the book, here are some other aspects in which we've taken this opportunity through the book to pay tribute to John. So you will see here that John's picture appears at the back cover, but more importantly, John is pictured with an orchid. And those of us who know John long enough will know that he was very much into orchids. And so it's fitting that the picture of him with one of his favorite orchids does appear at the back cover of this book. And in addition, the color of the book is John's favorite color, green. So another way that hopefully pays tribute to John. And the idea of the plant, the analogy of the plant continues in how we actually name the chapters. So in some sense, again, a tribute to John and also a recognition of his love for orchids. Now, I just want to share some last words from John. This is in the book, so if you haven't read it yet, you may want to close your eyes and turn off your speaker to actually enjoy the book to the end. But I'm just going to share what John said, because I think what he said has great value in terms of not only how we have looked back, but also how we can look ahead. So this is what John says at the end of the book. This is Singapore. Things will get done. We will move on. Mistakes, if any, will be quietly corrected without too much loss of face. It is impossible to imagine not wanting the insights and services that psychology can offer. The only question will be quite how fast and in what form NUS and other potential centers of excellence will develop. Looking back on a privileged 32 years of involvement in the psychology degree program, it is impossible not to feel some sense of optimism that whether despite or because of its strange start, psychology in Singapore and in NUS has a bright future, even if not necessarily a conventional one. So I think that kind of encapsulates John in so many ways, his vision, his optimism, and his love for NUS psychology. So this is the book. Now I'll pass the time back to Melvin.
Thanks very much, 𝗕𝘂𝗎. And it's now our pleasure to hear from our three guests of honors. Guests of honor, as mentioned, Prof. Vasoo will go first, followed by Prof. Tan, then Prof. Chua. Prof. Vasoo, may I invite you to unmute yourself and share from your experiences of the many years that you spent in this department.
Yes, I'm unmuted now, free to talk now, right? Thank you, Melvin. First of all, let me acknowledge a few people who have been associated with me and all others in the growth of this psychology program. President Tan Tai Yong of Yale NUS College, 𝗕𝘂𝗎, former head, Vincent Goh, the current head, Chua Fook, who was the starting head of psychology program, students of the psychology course, staff of the psychology program, alumni, and interested people out there. I'd like to thank you all for attending this launch of this book. As you all know, psychology has grown. It's got a life course over the last 35 years. It is now a top-rated school. I'm indeed very proud that it's become one. And if you look around on data and all that, psychology program is one of the top 16 programs in the world of School of Psychology. This is a marvelous achievement. And you all who are associated with this program, whether you're a student, you're a staff, your supporters, alumni, one must feel very proud that we have journeyed a long way to achieve this milestone of success. All this is not possible without dedicated staff, high quality staff, high quality student, resources available, people who influence the program, and then you have policies which affect the development of the program, and most importantly, I think, is the leadership that takes this program further. All these are factors, I think, that have influenced the psychology program, but I will just pick a few which are very critical. And these factors, namely people who influence the program, the quality of the academic staff who's involved, and the students who are associated with the program. All these are critical issues that have contributed to the remarkable position of psychology today. And I must say that the program has been influenced in its initial growth, initial setup by a few people. And I like to acknowledge them, and for the information of students who have not heard about them, these are luminaries who have contributed to the initiation of the program. First, we have Professor Limpin, who was then the Vice Chancellor of the university. Limpin imported the seeds of psychology. He is a very supportive, very warm person. He is now the distinguished professor who is doing research. You all should know, he is at NUH Hospital in the endocrine specialty. And as you know, psychology is also associated with endocrine issues, and it deals with emotions and feelings. And I must say that he is someone who has this emotion and feelings for psychology. Second, we have Professor Edwin Tambu, who is the NUS poet laureate. And Professor Tambu distributed the psychology seats to Professor Envy. And Professor Tambu is indeed very elegant, very supportive. And his language, if you read his poem, they're full of emotions and feelings. And being a writer of that status, he has contributed to the immense initiation of psychology. Then we have Professor Envy, who planted the seed of psychology. She has passed on, but I think she has contributed quite significantly to the program. And she, in fact, planted the seed for which I nurtured the plants that came up to grow to a small tree. And today it is a big fine tree. And this is, I think, very significant. I must say that, that all of them, I think not all of you know, but they have done the initial groundwork for the development of psychology. Then I must say that the book which has been launched by us today has been contributed with great efforts of Dr. John Elliott. And John Elliott is someone that I trusted. I worked with him. He's a formidable chap who has laid the foundation. And I must say that in his own quiet way, he has been associated with the growth of the program. And he has, in his own quiet way, despite being an orchid enthusiast and a grower, he has been also very helpful in growing the psychology program. And I must say that credit must go to him for anchoring the program for the last 32 years. And he has done so much. And therefore, he has also asked me from time to time for information to collate the write-up of the book. And I'm glad he has done this because he has been one of the pioneers involved in the development of the program. The title of the book is very interesting. As you all know, The Strange Start of Psychology. But I think to me, it's a very strange title, but strange in the sense that there are a lot of personalities involved, as you all know. Psychology, when I first started in 1986, when it became a program, full program, I had to take time to mobilize, recruit staff to join the department to run the undergraduate program. And they came from different psychological persuasions. There were the cognitive psychologists, you have the abnormal psychologists, you have the personality psychologists, you have the social psychologists, you have the industrial psychologists, you have the developmental psychologists. So you have, as you all know and appreciate, they're all of different persuasion. And getting them together to work with different personalities is not an easy thing, as you all know. They have their own hobby horses to ride, and they have their own views. When you get a few psychologists to come together to work, you never get an agreement, you know. You got to try very hard to build up a consensus. And it is an interesting thing because we need a very diversified group to be able to enrich the program. What is important is that finally I was able, you know, to organize them together to reach a consensus, to have a top-rated psychology undergraduate program based on a hybrid program, that is based on Cambridge, based on UK, and based on the American program. The top best programs offered by the top best universities in the two places. And they became a hybrid program. And finally, it was accepted after much argument, as you all know. A lot of hot air, a lot of wrangling, a lot of emotional investment on the works of this to get the program as a base to start with. I'm glad that they all finally agreed that we should have a top-rated program. And for this, we were able to recruit in 1986 the best batch of students that started with the program. This includes a lot of people, a lot of personalities like 𝗕𝘂𝗕𝗄, Winston Goh, I think subsequently followed Melvin Yap, Melvin Tan, Eddie Tong, and all those, you know, people, and 𝗕𝘂𝗆, you know, who has been involved too in the early start of the program. And we were able to get them together because they were all high-quality students. And we were very fortunate to have this group of students who eventually demonstrated the capacity that psychology has the standing and the capacity to contribute. And all these people became top scholars and they won scholarship, and was happy to encourage them to go for further training, to do their PhD in the States. People like 𝗕𝘂𝗕𝗄, people like Winston Goh, people like Melvin Yap, people like Eddie Tong, who finally went. And we had also David Chan, who is now in the Behavioral Science Institute in SMU. He was part of this crew of people who had tremendous high top-rated achievement. And this group of people eventually provided good leadership to the psychology program. I must say that a program, a department with good leadership with good vision, with good foresight, is able to bring psychology forward. And I must say that all these people, the scholars that we have contributed to the successful leadership for the psychology program. And succession of leadership is in fact critical for a program like that to demonstrate to the Singapore society that psychology can contribute. It has the tenacity to give its best. And as you all can see, today, with all these people who have gone through with the program, they form the anchor, they form the foundation of the psychology program. And it's been able to continue. And we have had the leadership. After John's leadership, grooming of these people, we have people, the head of department like 𝗕𝘂𝗃𝗃𝗃, followed by Winston Goh and Melvin Yap, who is now in the deanery doing research and in charge of undergraduate program. Besides that, we have Eddie Tong, Ryan Hong, Nicholas Horn, Sushil Kaur, Eddie Tong, I must say, in social psychology, Stephen Lim, who is teaching undergraduate, 𝗨𝘂𝘆𝘂, who is there. All of them were our top students of the days. And today, they have taken the leadership for the department. I'm indeed glad that they are there now in good hands to drive the department forward. You may ask yourself, what is the future for the department? What is the future contribution for psychology? I think that's a very critical question that we all have to address. Where do we go from here? What can we do to contribute? And on my personal note, I must say that psychology has tremendous potential in a society like ours, and to also contribute to the region. We must also look outside Singapore to be able to see how we can contribute to the growth of this discipline in terms of human behavior, human development in the region. Now, what is...
Sorry, Prof. Vasoo, I'm afraid we actually do need to move on to the other speakers so that we can have Q&A. So could you wrap up in about a minute or so, then we can, more time for Q&A.
I'll wrap up in 2 minutes' time.
Okay, sure.
What is important is that I think we have to look at the impact of various social and psychological issues on human behavior. This will be crisis, this will be pandemic, this will be social and ecological changes that have impact on individual behavior and human behavior. And in understanding this, I think we have to enhance our social and psychological analytical skills in appreciating and understanding the problems. If we can face this and challenge ourselves to this, then psychology will be one of the most formidable programs to contribute to human development in Singapore. With that note, I'd like to thank you all for hearing me out.
Thanks so much, Prof. Vasoo. Really nice to be able to hear from someone who was there from the very beginning. Before I introduce the next speaker, I'll just let the audience know that you can actually post questions. So if you look at the chat box, there's a link to Pigeonhole. You can go in and post your question. I know that there's already one question there from Professor 𝗕𝘂𝗿𝗄. So please feel free to contribute more questions and we can take them during the Q&A session. So for our next speaker, we have Professor Tan Tai Yong, President of Yale NUS College and also then Dean of FASS when psychology became independent. I invite Professor Tan now to share his experiences and thoughts.
Thank you very much, Melvin. Thank you all at the department for inviting me to the launch of this book. It's good to see the department again and all of you, including many old friends. So let me begin by congratulating the department for publishing this important history. As a historian, I naturally find such endeavors meaningful and necessary. in explaining who we are and reflecting on the journey that has taken us here. So as 𝗕𝘁 said, this is an institutional memory, and I think it's a necessary one, especially for a department like psychology, which, as the title of the book claims, has had a kind of a strange start. I commend the department for successfully bringing out its history, and I'm personally grateful to our dear friend, the late John Elliott, for researching and writing most of the book, and to 𝗕𝘁 for completing it. 𝗕𝘁 is humble in not wanting to claim credit, but I'm sure without his effort, the book may not have seen the light of day, notwithstanding the kind of effort that John had put into it. I'm also grateful that this is an opportunity for us all to pay tribute to John, and also to have given him a voice through this book to talk about his 32 years of deep engagement and seeing the history through his personal involvement of such an important department. The account by John and 𝗕𝘁 is thorough, insightful, reflective, and I must say honest. And it's an enjoyable read. It's written in a very good style. The prose flows very well, so I recommend all of you to read this. And I personally enjoyed the book very much because I was a participant in some of the key episodes in the department's history. So pouring through these pages brought back so many memories. John made references to some of the emotions among faculty during the discussions and run-up to the separation, and reading them brought back a particularly vivid image of a meeting I had with psychology faculty, during which I wanted to temper expectations by saying that, you know, we had a good case. This was before we went up to Senate, that we had a good case for separation. But what if we did not get this? What if the Senate voted against this? So I said, well, I'm optimistic, but cautiously so. At that point, I recall George Bishop thumping his fist on the table, face turning red, and declaring that he would resign if the separation was denied. Well, I'm glad that we got what we wanted, and George did not have to resign, but we made him pay for the remark by making him the first head of an independent psychology department. And I was glad that he was there because, you know, his efforts and his energy really made a difference. And as I occasionally reflect on my time as Dean of FASS, the separation of social work and psychology into two distinct departments, and then going on to establish themselves as highly reputable departments in their own right, must count as one of the finer moments of my deanship. Let me end by sharing a couple of behind-the-scenes negotiations that many of you may not know about. First, when we were preparing to go to Senate, the Dean of the Faculty of Science, who's now our president, suggested to me that psychology, since it's going to be a lab-based discipline, should go to the Faculty of Science. It should become a department at the Faculty of Science. I said to him then, nothing doing, it will stay at FASS. And being the gentleman that he is, he backed off and did not pursue the matter further. Well, if he had his way, psychology would not be in the FASS today, the way stats ended up in the Faculty of Science and Mass Comm at NTU. So interesting twist there, but you know, in the end, we decided that psychology should stay in FASS, and it is important that we do not lose it, as we were just getting onto the stage of getting it to become an independent department to another faculty. Now, the other thing that I recalled was, and this is related to this point, was that in talking to Provost Tan Chor Chuan at that point in time, I quickly learned to use the language that was necessary at that point in time, how the social sciences and humanities could interface more productively with the STEM side of NUS. I think that was the spot that I wanted to reach, and this was where I felt that I could convince the leaders at University Hall that this was the case that we could make for psychology. So when I approached him with George Bishop's long and demanding shopping list for space and headcounts, I told him that psychology had the best potential amongst all the departments at FASS to engage the other side of campus, and the department would show the way. He understood, and then we got what we wanted from him. Well, mainly, almost, because we did try our luck and pushed a bit further and asked him for an MRI machine in the department. And he, in the typical 𝗨𝘁𝗿𝗄𝗏 way, smiled benignly and said, no, why don't you guys go and share it with the Faculty of Medicine? So we didn't get the MRI machine. Anyway, those were my recollections of those interesting years. And again, I want to commend the people in the department, especially the late John Elliott, for the effort in bringing together this book, which I highly recommend to all of you who are associated with psychology in so many ways. I'll end here. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, 𝗨𝘂𝘆. Again, I just want to remind the audience that we have a pigeonhole where you can post questions. So I'll encourage all of you, if you have any questions or even insights or comments that you want to share about your own experience with the department, please post them there and we can talk about them later on. Last but not least, I'd like to invite Prof. Chua to share as the final head of the Joint Department of Social Work and Psychology, who played a critical role in helping to usher the Joint Department into two separate independent entities. Prof. Chua, when you're ready, you can unmute yourself and share with us your experiences.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for inviting me. Like 𝗨𝘁𝘁𝗄𝗏, I enjoyed reading the book. The book actually helped me remember many things that I forgot about the department, my life as a teacher in the department, and so on. I joined the department in 1986 during the second semester. I had earlier applied to the department for a teaching job, but I was turned down. 𝗕𝘂𝘆𝗰𝗵, who was then running the department, wrote me a very terse note saying that they didn't need another low-level perceptual psychologist in the department. So fine. And then subsequently, Vasoo wrote me a letter saying, get yourself to a job interview. And the interviewer then was the social worker in Berkeley. And then I was offered the job. So second try, and I was successful. I don't remember many of the events that John Elliott related in the book, but I'm sure much of it must be true. It's just old age and memory deterioration, and I don't remember. One incident sort of stood out for me. He claimed in the book that I once walked out of a tutorial because none of the students prepared did the necessary reading. I did not remember that at all. I thought I was, a very friendly teacher, and I can't see myself walking out of a tutorial acting like a damn diva, but it must have happened. What 𝗨𝘁𝘁𝘆 related about the then Dean of Science wanting psychology to be part of the Faculty of Science, it's interesting because in my conversation with the late 𝗦𝘁𝗶𝗃, Anne told me that initially psychology was shocked to the Dean of Science when the department was mooted. But the then Dean of Science, whoever he is or she is, thought that psychology is too much of a voodoo discipline, and they didn't want to have anything to do with psychology. And then it was shopped to sociology, and sociology said, no, we already have anthropology, and we don't want another, another limb, so to speak. And then finally, Anne, who was then head of social work, decided that she would agree to house the psychology program within the social work department. I had a meeting with John Elliott and he asked me questions relating to the early days of the department. My memory is really hazy because most of what we did then was actually a lot of teaching then. The other thing that I remember quite well was the meeting in Senate when Yong was dean, and we made the case for a separate department. I remember preparing like mad for the Senate meeting, and they did not even ask me any questions. So it was like preparing for a damn tutorial, and the teacher didn't pick on you to answer the questions. It was quite a letdown. So those were the two events that I remember rather well. Apart from that, it was a good ride. I enjoyed my days in the department, and that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Fook. Really illuminating, as I said, to hear from people who were there at these pivotal moments in the department. Okay, so we actually have moving on to our Q&A session now. We have 2 questions and 1 comment that have been posted so far. So I can start directing the questions to our 3 panelists as well as to 𝗕cique and Winston if they would like to address them. So the first question that we have comes from Professor 𝗕ncih, who asks, British position on post-war late colonial development focus on social welfare in the context of development, and hence is closer to colonial anthropology. How has NUX exception shaped psychology and social work? Anyone who would like can take the question?
I think I'll have to leave it to the experts to answer this.
Well, I think 𝗕ncih's question, you should direct the question to him because he's doing quite a fair bit of research in Southeast Asia. But I would say that we never adopted the colonial sort of an approach to problem solving, whether in psychology, whether in social work. We adopted a Asian model, a very localized approach in problem solving, appreciating the local cultural context of people wanting to self-help and be involved in that. So we didn't really swallow lock, stock and barrel, the British approach to welfare. And Singapore, as you know, Singapore social policy was full of detests for welfarism. The moment you talk about welfarism, it becomes very negative. Although there is some elements and truth for us, because in all societies, you will always have the underprivileged and people who probably do not have any forms of support. And who would take care of them? There must be somebody who is willing, the state and NGOs, the non-voluntary, non-governmental voluntary organizations to participate in it. What is important is that in both social work and psychology, we took a cross-cultural approach in understanding problems. I think that's very important. People locally, Asians locally, and others have a social cultural perspective of self, of how they see themselves, how they interact with others. And then the issue of face, I think, is tremendously important. How we view face, because in the British and the Western context, face doesn't come in because they become a bit more self-centered in their whole approach, or not really looking at face as part of the influence of behavior. So psychology, we are also fortunate in the early days to have Colin Watt, who is a a very versatile person in cross-cultural psychology. And she herself is a Britisher, you know, trained at Newcastle and all that. And she went to Australia, she has been exposed to Malaysia, and she's able to adopt and look at the cross-cultural perspective of contribution to psychology. And she brought her expertise and trained students, I think, in the Department of Social Work and Psychology on cross-cultural issues. And I'm indeed happy that she was able to do that. And many of the students, including Winston, 𝗕𝘂𝗕𝗂 and all those, you know, even Melvin, probably must have benefited from her exposure and her views of cross-cultural issues to psychology and social work.
Thank you, Prof. Vasoo. I think the next question has to be taken by Winston and 𝗕𝘂𝗕. So Michelle from our department would like to ask people who have taken classes with John Elliott at NUS, what were some of the most memorable moments for you? The only two people who can answer this question on the panel will be 𝗕𝘂𝗕 and Winston.
Melvin, you're not involved, eh? I thought you.
No, I'm MC, so I'm excused from the answers.
But you can give your views too, Melvin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You must have taken history and systems with John.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So that was his pet.
Yeah.
Yeah, 𝗕𝘂𝗕, you want to go ahead?
Well, actually, three of us are not the only ones who were taught by John. I do see many of my first cohort classmates here. I'm not sure if you want to unmute them to contribute, but I think if there is one word or one phrase that I took from taking classes under John, it would be the word or phrase critical thinking. John was always very sharp, probe deeply, and not accepting what we would offer as our first response. Unlike these days where I tend to just say, okay, that's a good contribution the moment I get a response from a student. But John would not be satisfied often with that often shallow kind of response and probe deeper. And I think that is something that I picked up through my classes with John, and that is something that I myself now try to incorporate in my own teaching. So yeah, that would be my one takeaway if I had to choose one.
Thanks, 𝗕𝘂𝗕.
I mean, I agree with 𝗕𝘂𝗕. He always emphasized critical thinking, which is why his tutorials were all always enjoyable because, like I said, there's very small classes, and then each of us could debate issues and so forth. I do remember John is a very tough marker. Right, I actually originally my slides had this, but I removed it for lack of time. I never got an A for my term papers from him. So the highest, I once achieved B- for one, and the other improved slightly to B for the other one. So he's a very tough marker. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. This one probably will have to go to Fookie. So what are some things that a young aspiring psych student today would not get to experience or understand as compared to those who studied psychology during the pioneer years?
I guess the syllabus has remained largely unchanged. I think one of the things we did right was to emphasize statistics and research methods and required right through the student's career. So, you know, I'm fairly old-fashioned about what I think psychology syllabus ought to contain. And I think I feel there's just too much choice. Students have too much freedom to pick. There's too much of a buffet now. I much prefer a more constrained syllabus where you do what is considered the canonical areas in psychology. So I'm not sure. I've not looked at the syllabus in the last couple of years, but I think one thing we've done right is to insist right at the start that statistics and research methods form the core of the syllabus. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Fook. Okay, and I just want to thank Emily for her kind comments. She posted that she wanted to thank NUS Psychology for giving her an excellent foundation and inspiring her always, and wanted to congratulate us on the launch of this book. Okay, so let me just move on to the end of today's event. So just let me share screen. Give me a while, sorry. Okay, so I hope all of you have enjoyed the walk down memory lane in the past hour. I just want to convey our gratitude to our special guests, the speakers, and you for the questions that have helped provoke a lively discussion this morning. I also want to thank Ms. 𝗕𝘁cie for helping to work really hard to put this event together. For those of you who miss it, a recording of this session will be made available. Suki will provide you with the necessary details when the recording is online. And finally, in case you are interested, here's the QR code if you would like to purchase a personal copy of John's book. Copies are limited. I understand there are not more than 150 or 170 copies. And so we are capping each buyer at up to 2 copies. If you can wait, a free ebook version will be available for download around March next year. Okay, so thanks everyone again for your fantastic support and company this morning. We hope you enjoyed this session as much as we did. Wishing you a great year end and a fantastic weekend. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. See you all. Keep well.
Thanks everyone.
Yes. Keep
Hey,
well
bye.
and safe. See you
Bye.
all. Stephen, see you. Good to see you, Stephen. Yes. 𝗕𝘁𝗄𝐿, good to see you too. Yes. Ryan Hong, you're looking great. Professor Ramada Singh is hiding behind the scene. And he's one of those, you know, who had pioneered. We have left him out, but anyway, he did his best in social psychology. Yes. Okay, Vincent, Melvin.
Thanks, Vasoo. Yeah,
Yeah.
really appreciate your coming down
yes.
to share. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that I should participate with you all because I grew up with all of you, you know.
Yes. I think you're the one who gave all of us our jobs actually.
Yeah, actually, if you look at it, yeah, Vincent, Go, Ryan Hong, what have you, you know, all those guys, even Fook, you know. Yeah, because they're all very bright chaps who are promising, you know. I didn't go wrong, you know, having to pun on the right horses, man, to be able to lay the foundation. I think with you all, I think the psychology foundation is laid, because at least at hard time, you have somebody to carry the cross. And that I think is very important. And glad that 𝗕𝘁𝗍𝗓, followed by Vincent Go, followed by Melvin Yap and all that, even Ryan Hong, I think, done their best to contribute, you know. And Stephen, that time I already was no more head of the department, but I knew him as a student who did very well, bright, you know, very much in his area of work on self and development and what have you, you know, and into e-learning now, which as a very good teacher, inspiring for students. And Bibi, you know, I think she's one of the long-standing person anchoring the department's administrative work, and all the others, including Irene and Janice, some of them who provide the work. And Mr. Fred Long, is one of our backers for clinical psychology, I think credit must also go to him for inspiring to get the clinical work done. And we are fortunate to have, quite a lot of people like Ramda Singh, Fred Long, Wong Monkey, who is no more around, all friends of Fred and others who have contributed. And Losna was one of those who is now your director for clinical psychology. She came to me for advice, and I said, you're going to University of Queensland to do a psychology program instead of NUS. So I encouraged her to take clinical psychology, and she did, and today she's back, not forgetting us, and then she has joined us to contribute to the clinical psychology program, for which I think it's growing, and it's got an important role to play. So all the best to all of you, and good to have Mr. Ramda Singh, who is now distinguished professor at Ahmedabad now, and he has been given a couple of distinguished awards by the social psychology, by Ahmedabad University, by the university at Bangalore, Indian Institute of Management, I think, for which he has been contributing. And he's still there, so we should try and see whether we can invite him back to give some lectures, Vincent, at some point, Melvin.
Yes.
Contribute.
Yeah, sure. See how the pandemic situation.
Pandemic and all that.
Yeah.
He could give some seminars and all that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a valuable contribution that you could make.
Yeah.
So all the best to all of you, and I'll take leave. Thank you very much for staying on and to be the anchors to the program.
Thanks, everyone. Have a
Okay.
great day.
Bye.
Bye.